My bit was actually going to be done by Caitlin Weatherstone from Byron Council. I was supposed to be just the guy who was helping out with coffee and that sort of thing and moving chairs around. And so yes, I'm substituting in for Caitlin. So I'd just like to acknowledge her because she had put together a very comprehensive package of notes, which look, I'll hand around now. So look, to start with, the background with Maria's given it's a really good segue. This is all about scats. So it's all about koala poo essentially. And the idea of SAT surveys is that it's really based on that because koala scats actually provides indirect evidence that koalas are present in the landscape. I'm sure most of you have been out there trying to find koalas. I'm sure you'll agree they're notoriously difficult to try and spot, particularly depending on the type of forest you're in, particularly when you get in the thick of these moister coastal forests. So that's the good thing about SATs and finding scats. It'll tell you the presence there, even if you can't see them. It was based on Steve Phillips and John Callahan's work and during the noughts. I'm sure quite a few of you might have heard of Steve Phillips. He's a bit of a granddaddy of koala work on the North Coast. He's been in that space about 30 odd years. Him and John were the architects of the SAT program. It was based on an enormous data set. I think that was based on 14,313 trees, in fact, and 405 field plots. So what they did, they built an enormous database over time and did a lot of analysis work about how you can utilise scats in this SAT method. And SAT actually stands for Spot Assessment Technique. So SAT's actually the acronym. Bit confusing because it's scat, sat and spot. A few things with it, and it's generally used in a sort of systematic way. You can see there on that first page, halfway down, that regularised grid-based SAT, or the RGB SAT. What that means is typically when SATs are done in a very systematic, broad-scale approach, they are put in a regularised grid over the landscape. So this is actually the whole Northern Rivers. So all 6 shires of the Northern Rivers, you can see a sort of roughly a grid shape distribution of those dot points. And that's actually done on a 5 by 5 kilometre grid spacing. I can pass that around there. And that was an incredible piece of work that was just done 2 years ago where we got BioLink, which is actually Steve's company. The guys from BioLink did this systematic survey of 383, I think it was, SAT sites spread across the Northern Rivers to give us an indication of activity, a bit of a snapshot in time about koala presence across that landscape. That's over in a time, that's almost 1 million hectares that was dispersed over, that sort of survey. You can see scale that to that. And we bring it back to a property like this, 100 hectares. You could be working on setting up a grid across that 100 hectare property, probably at 500 metre spacings, depending, you know, again, on your resourcing and this sort of thing. Sort of lay a big grid over the property. On those crosshairs at those 500 metre intersections, that's where you would be doing your SAT surveys. So that's a systematic, regularised grid approach to doing a SAT survey. Now the thing is with SAT surveys, what does it tell you? What it tells you is 2 things. It tells you it's a presence-absence. So you do your survey, it'll tell you whether the koalas are present or absent at that site. There's a slight twist in the tail with that one, which we'll get to, but it's essentially a presence-absence. And the other thing that it can tell you is an activity level. Essentially, you're surveying 30 trees in each plot and looking for the presence of koala scats beneath those 30 trees. You're spending 2 minutes on each tree and just looking, like Maria said, within 1 metre of the base of that tree. But what that tells you, say for example, you check the 30 trees and you get scats under 15 of them. You can then, from that, decide if you have an activity level of 50%, meaning 50% or half the trees on that plot had evidence of koalas there. And then we can do things like, with that information, you can start scaling that out. And again, sorry about the tiny scale of this, but you develop things called heat maps. And what that shows you, can you see the darker orangey red polygons or blobs in there? These are the areas of high, moderate to high koala activity. So based on those activity levels, typically it'll be above, probably around that 22% or greater. So quite a few of those trees had scats. We can start getting a sense of activity. And you'll see, you know, particularly in that southern Lismore area, that's the area of highest koala activity. Can people see that? It's very scale adaptive, the SAT method. You can be doing it again on a property like this at 100 hectares. You can be just doing it at 1 hectare. And again, for a lot of people, SAT surveys is just a way to go out to find out, because quite a lot of people want to know, oh look, I think I've got koalas on my property. I can't see them. I think I might have heard them sometimes. Again, this is all about ways to find those indirect evidence that there's koalas on your property. See that small little table there on page 3, just towards 2/3 of the way down there? And you see you've got East Coast low and East Coast high as an activity category. Then your categories are low, medium and high use. Typically medium or high means you've got resident koalas. Like from that heat map, they're the ones with the orange or red blobs there. So that typically says you've got resident koalas there. Low or not present, and again we'll get on to what absent, there's a twist in the tail with absent too, because there's things like false positives as well, which I'll mention in a moment. But typically what it is with the activity level is those 3 categories. Well, I mean the other one they haven't got there is no use, where you've got no evidence of them. And the East Coast low and East Coast high bit really depends on the productivity of the soils and the landscapes there. So to distill that down, places like around southern Lismore, which you saw in that heat map showing high activity, stacks of koalas around, they're very productive soils in that landscape there, which can support a lot more koalas, high densities of koalas. Compared to say this property here, and I think I've got it, again, we showed it there, you know, we're outside those high activity areas here, around Tintinbar as well. We're on the edge again of those high productivity soils. Say for example here, it's regarded as East Coast low. So say we go out there and we do a SAT survey and we find, oh, we've got 10% of the trees. So we go 30 trees, 3 of the trees had scats under them. That gives us an activity level of 10%. That's right, isn't it? Yep, 10%. So we would then go, okay, we're on a property that's in an East Coast low area. We then look at that table, the row that says East Coast low, look across, 10%, that's actually a low use is below 9.97%. Between 9.97% and 12.59% is medium use. We've got 10%, so we're medium activity. Another important feature about SAT, remember it's the 2 things, presence, absence, and then activity level. You can't use that to determine what your population of koalas are there. Has anyone got any idea why you can't sort of infer from your SCAT surveys how many koalas might be around in a particular, like on here, 100 hectares? Because it doesn't tell you how many individuals are there. You're absolutely right. Could be that, you know, 1 or 2 koalas moving right quite extensively. Also things like the type of landscape, the type of forest you're in has a confounding effect as well. It can create a bias. You go out there into these moist coastal forests, say where there's a lot of understory up there, or there's thick leaf litter. I'm sure people know where the fire's been excluded for a long time. You can get huge build-ups of leaf litter. That's a lot harder to try and find a koala scat in that sort of place, or when there's thick grass. That's probably even worse, you know, trying to find koala scats in thick grass. And with the SAT survey, you've only got technically 2 minutes to do that search around that 1 metre. And that's really tough to do when it's a lot of thick leaf litter or it's got thick grass. So immediately you've introduced a bias compared to say when you go west of the range, where you've got more woodland environments and, you know, light grassy understories, obviously the visibility is much better for searching there. So you can do a much more effective search.
And just because the dot is located where it is, I've done them where the koala's literally in the tree next to the 30 that we've done, which excludes that koala and its scats from. So, yeah, So the SAT doesn't pick up like that population size.
And look, it's a well-accepted method. It's been well adopted right through the Eastern Australia. The Commonwealth Governor more or less, endorsed the method as well. But it's really important that people recognise the constraints with it. So like any method, any sort of method you're using out there, a field method, it has its constraints, its pros and cons.
Why do you have a time limit on looking for the scat?
I suppose that was part of the method, is about trying to standardise search effort, really. So that way you can compare between, because I suppose important part of study design is about repeatability. So you need to standardise your method so it's very repeatable over through different sites and through in time. So that way you can compare. Say for example, if you didn't standardise that, and at some places you went out and you spent 10 minutes under each tree, in other places you only spent a minute. Also different skill level, people who are quite new to it and not that familiar with scat surveying. People familiar with acoustic monitors or song meters or audio moths, don't know whether people have heard of them. Actually, I was going to bring one and unfortunately didn't. So just a box about the size of your fist. You can put these things up out in the forest. All they are essentially is a fancy recorder, audio recorder, really sensitive. Depending on what sort of model you're using, typically you can have ranges up to 200 or 300 metres. So that'll be like the radius of which that recorder will hear. You can program it to record. Typically for koala surveys, we do it dusk to dawn, so that nighttime period for 2 weeks, for 14 nights. And then, someone goes out there, puts it out there at the spot, goes back 2 weeks later, collects your song meter, takes it back. The AI then churns through the audio recordings and spits out the detections with it. Now with that, it's just based on koala bellows. So you're typically only picking up the males, and it's really restricted that survey window around spring, early summer, with, the breeding period when you're most likely, when there's a lot more bellowing happening. So again, it is limited in terms of that survey window, but there was a paper recently comparing cameras, so sticking cameras up there, and so again a regularised grid compared to audio devices like song meters compared to drones, and they actually found doing 14 nights the detection probabilities were higher with audio devices, even slightly better than drones, and way better than cameras. So cameras aren't a very good method for trying to detect koalas. So promise with the audio devices, and the good thing is it's really cost effective. You just need someone to bang it out there, collect it 2 weeks later, and post-processing by AI. So again, AI is permeating all the space, but I suppose comparing that down to SAT surveys is sort of going right back to the other end, a really low tech sort of, but not completely, because also you can complement SAT surveys when you get the scats like Maria has done, and Maria's done a lot of this, submitting them. You can do analysis on those scats for disease, for the presence of chlamydia. You can do DNA, extract DNA from it, and that is a way to determine individuals in your landscape by getting the DNA from them.
And diversity, and whether they're inbreeding, the sex of them, their relationships. And cousins and brothers.
Sorry, I'm just wondering what you're using. So you lay a grid out over your property, but how are you getting to the point that you've decided on your grid?
Legging it, you're walking.
No. How do you identify that point?
Oh, how do you identify that point? Yes, good point.
Yeah,
well,
are you using Google Maps or something?
Yes, look, absolutely. Well, typically people will be using some sort of GIS program, or can you do it in Google Maps? Anyone done with Google Maps doing a grid? I'm not sure it would have the facilities within that. Typically people will be... There's a program called QGIS. I don't know, some people might be familiar with QGIS. QGIS. So that's a freeware. Yes, that would be a great one. So again, and you can do online tutorials with that and help teach yourself how to do that. So to do things like overlays, create a different layer, like a grid overlay.
So the idea is that you have those fixed points in the landscape, but if you go to those and there isn't, so like when we did a lot on the Alstonville Plateau, that particular situation applied. So you go to the closest location to that point. And yes, so the closest of the trees that are near that grid, and near that point, and then do your 30 trees at that location, and just make a note that, you know, that grid point was relocated to here because it was in a macadamia farm or a paddock, and there were no trees.
There's been a few other people who've come up, researchers who've come up with some alternative methods. There's a thing called a rapid sat. So rather than the full sat 30 trees at a site, you can do a rapid sat, and that one is you're actually going to ideally to a primary, you're going out there trying to find a primary koala food tree, surveying that, and the closest primary or at least preferred koala food trees, 5 or 7 of them the closest to that. Again, 2 minutes under each one. But as soon as you get a scat, you're out of there. So you can't then use it for activity levels, but it's purely a presence-absence thing. So that's called a rapid sat. Again, addressing that criticism about the randomisation, that bias. CRAM, which is the Koala Rapid Assessment Method, that does a randomise, and again, it sticks to that randomisation, and again, it's the closest tree to that crosshairs point, so long as it's 100 mil and it's a woody plant, essentially. And then there's this BKS, the Balanced Koala Scat Survey, where again, they do that as well, really strict about that point that becomes the centre tree, but then there's not a restriction on the search time. So that you could spend 2 hours at that site, essentially, particularly if it's really thick. So, that doesn't become very practical if you've got 200 sites to be. But anyway, they're alternative methods that people have come up with. The other thing is, if it's just for your property, like you're talking like a Tallowood windrow or something, you just go, all right, I'm just going to check every 100 metres, plot those points, and go back every 12 months or something, and then you can see over time, because, that's going to tell you something about your property, about the presence of koalas, and also how that might change. That's a nice thing about standardising where you do it and how long you do it for, is then you can compare over time. That's the question about standardisation and repeatability. Repeating the same method each time you do it and over time means you have some confidence about comparing over time. We've done our 10 sites in this windrow during spring. We'll come back next spring and do it the same way in the following spring, and you can then track the trend over time then.